Fortifying structure. They say a man's home is his castle. That's what we're going to talk about today. Every once in a while, you guys really surprise me. I put out polls on Patreon. I try to remember to make it open to whoever goes there to look at it. So you might want to go there and do that if you want to vote on content. This one really surprised me. This won the poll, and I kind of put it in as an afterthought because I haven't talked about it really on an entire episode, but it really surprised me that it won out of I think 10 or 11 options. This one won the vote of content, fortifying structures. So, per the request of the audience, and hopefully you if you're a patron, that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to the podcast. We're going to tackle this topic and hopefully, by God's grace, many more in the future, the right way with Almighty God at the center, biblical Judeo-Christian values, and real-world firsthand experience. Now, I'm going to do a little bit different, focus on the bio today than what I normally do, because I do have quite a bit, by God's grace, experience in this topic, and I think it's important to lay out the bona fides, the bona fides, however you want to pronounce that, in the beginning so you know why you should listen to what I have to say. So I'm a combat veteran. I served in Iraq, and among a bunch of other stuff, I received a Certificate of Commendation, which is a pretty decent achievement. It's not like the Congressional Medal of Honor or anything, but it's a decent achievement. It's not something just everybody gets, right? It's not just like a participation trophy. It was specifically written up for me for protection of a combat base in Iraq, for running the entrance and egress of said base, like running who gets in, who gets out, and me supervising that and running that. I received that Certificate of Commendation. Let's see, I've also, you guys probably know, currently work and have worked as a private security contractor for different three-letter government agencies. Part of that is protecting life, information, and infrastructure. I'm not going to get too specific, but read between the lines. I have guarded some of the most secret and dangerous things that we have made as humans on the planet. So take that for what it's worth. I was also a trainer for those forces, so I trained them how to do that. Now, I've mentioned before that I was the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters. Now, a lot of that is responding to active shooters, but not all of it. Some of that is setting up missions, executive protection, and securing buildings, structures, arenas, working with like the Secret Service and other things for VIPs, not because I really give two craps about the VIP any more than any other breathing person, but they draw large crowds, and large crowds draw active shooters. So I was in charge of writing operational orders and things like that to secure some of the biggest, A-list celebrities and politicians and music industry people and giant arenas, because that was my job. So I think that's enough bona fides. And I've been blessed to have all that experience, and one of the reasons I started the podcast is to give you guys access to real-world firsthand experience and information. I hope you appreciate that. If you do, you can check out more on Patreon. Anyway, moving on. This topic kind of surprised me because I didn't think it was going to be of much interest to people, but again, it won the vote. And the more I got taking notes on this, I actually took notes for this episode, guys. Can you believe it? Normally I just talk and ramble on, but I actually did take notes for this one. So the more I took notes, the more notes I took, which led me to realize this is a broad topic. I could probably do an entire separate podcast on this, like literally. So realize that this is like a flyover view of this. This is a bird's eye view. This is not getting down into the nitty gritty. I'm going to touch on some stuff that you can research on your own. First thing I'm going to talk about for fortifying structures, you'd probably guess, God, the laws of God. You should know what your rules of engagement are. And those should first and foremost be dictated by God's law. For instance, God's law. If a man is caught breaking in and is struck so that he dies, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed. All right, there's one. The kidnapper shall be put to death. There's another one. If anyone sheds man's blood, by man's blood, or if anyone sheds man's blood, by man, his blood shall be shed. There's another law of God. You also have to deal with laws of man. These are less important, but also kind of germane. You should probably know things like your Fourth Amendment, right to search and seizure, right, things like that. So you should start off with that foundation and do some research on that, because if you don't have those things in firm grasp, none of this other stuff really matters. So laws of God and man. That's the first thing you should delve into. The next one, I think second most important, dogs. Now, I was a police officer. Well, I dealt with a lot of stuff getting broken into. And I'm here to tell you, I don't think that alarms are really useful for anything, like as far as home alarms go. Now, if you sell home alarms or whatever, you're in that racket or you're in that business, okay. But I'm just telling you from my personal experience, I never caught anybody breaking in, responding to a home alarm, and I never knew anybody that actually caught somebody broken into. Let me give you a quick rundown on how this generally works. You have some kind of home alarm, whether an audible alarm or a silent alarm, you're at work or wherever you're at. Somebody breaks into your house. Well, I'm not going to make up numbers, but a big majority of alarm calls are false alarms. So anytime an alarm goes off, people just assume it's a false alarm, whether they should or not. It's just the way that it is, because a lot of times you're setting off the alarm by accident or whatever it is. But let's say the alarm goes off. Well, the alarm company is going to probably try and contact you. They try and contact you. You don't answer. Then that alarm company in Georgia or New Delhi or wherever it is, right? A lot of that stuff's getting outsourced and to whatever, second world or third world country it is. They then have to look up what jurisdiction you're in. Let's say you're in Georgia. They call whatever local place is in Georgia. The dispatcher answers that call, probably not a priority call. They answer it. This is, again, not a priority call, so they look for an available unit. If there is an available unit, they'll assign it to them. If not, they'll put it in their queue to get around to it when they get around to it, and then that unit will respond to your house. How long do you think that process takes? How long do you think it would take an adversary to break into your house, do really horrible things to you and your family, and or take everything that is valuable, or the things they want that are valuable, and leave? Probably that's a much less amount of time than that first process I talked about. So alarms, mostly useless. But if you want to spend the money on it, go ahead. What's much more effective than that, again, getting to the second most important, or third most important, laws of God, laws of man, dogs. A good dog, not like some little dog in name only, but a good protection dog, a good alert dog, a good alarm dog. I raise and breed Rhodesian Ridgebacks. My Rhodesian Ridgeback, Alexander Hamilton, is a phenomenal guard dog. It impresses me, and I was the manager of quite a few canines. He impresses me with how good he is, how vigilant he is, how good he is at being a protection dog. He's many other things. He's a hunting dog. He's a great family companion dog. He's great with kids, but he's a phenomenal guard dog. He almost never barks, but when he barks, you had better pay attention, because he doesn't bark for nothing. The kind of dog I like. And he's very intimidating. He's like 118 pounds, probably a little bit less now because my female's in heat and he's been running around like a chicken with his head cut off. But right around 118 pounds of muscle and aggression, and a big protection dog, Rhodesian Ridgeback. Doesn't have to be a Rhodesian Ridgeback. There are many good protection dogs and guard dogs, Rottweilers, Mastiffs, Bull Mastiffs, things like that. So a good dog is way, way better and more effective than an alarm. An alarm's kind of a known thing for a burglar or, a home invasion person. They kind of know what they're dealing with an alarm. A dog is an unknown to them. Dogs are very effective. Again, we're not talking about Chihuahuas, right? We're talking about an actual dog. They can be very, very effective. That said, they're also a lot of work. You should not just get a dog for this. You should get a dog because you love dogs and you're going to love that dog and it's going to love you. And it's going to be part of your daily life for, God willing, let's say a decade or more. That's a lot. That's a big commitment. So my advice, don't get some shelter dog. Don't get some rescue dog. Don't get some charity case dog. Get a good working dog that you pay for and train. That is one of your most effective things inside and outside the house for protection, for alerting, a dog is so much more useful, in my opinion, for many things than an alarm system. That said, they're a big commitment. But dogs, that's a big one. Okay, next one, you have to define what your perimeter is for you, for your dog, for your systems that you're going to put in place. What is your perimeter, right? What is your perimeter and what is not? Now, if you live like in the suburbs and your front door is 10 feet, 20 feet off a main public road or a cul-de-sac, this is not great, right? This is not a very large perimeter. It doesn't take me hardly any time to go from public property to in your house. It takes very little time because it takes very little space. That's how that works. Theory of relativity, time and space, right? Doesn't have much. You're much better with a lot more standoffs. If you're looking for property, this is something to look at. But what is your perimeter? You first have to define what your perimeter is. Now, you could have like your legal perimeter and you could have your observable perimeter. Like your observable perimeter likely can extend farther than your actual perimeter. You probably want some early warning, unless you live on like a really busy street where people are walking and driving by all the time. You probably want a little bit of warning between when they come on your property from their observable perimeter. So what's your actual legal perimeter? Like what's your actual property? What's your observable perimeter? You need to define these things for you. And you need to define them legally, going back to one of the first points we made. So what is your perimeter? Next one, alarms. Your general, like electronic alarms, mostly useless. You can do some pretty low-tech alarms if you're home. One of the most effective ones that I've used in real life, during a war, is something like fishing string or just regular string, like small string, with cans with rocks in it, placed in strategic places where people are going to go. Going back to what is your perimeter, identify the likely ingress routes where people are going to walk most of the time. And you probably not all the time, but if you have something like a back gate to your fence that you don't use all the time, setting up like a simple fishing string with an audible alarm that you can hear or your dog can hear. Very simple, very low tech. It can be other things. Now, shy of actually the balloon hitting the fan and without rule of law type stuff, I would not have any kind of deadly traps or booby traps that are deadly or injurious because, that could really be a problem. But you could do things that are, legal and like putting a row of barbed wire on top of your fence or something like that. You might want to look at something like that. Again, low tech. It could be something as simple as if you have windows around the back of your house or windows that people could easily crawl into, like your kid's room, your bedroom, or whatever, you might want to put down, you remember that bubble wrap when you had so much fun playing with when you were a kid, like the stuff with the bigger bubbles? You could lay that down underneath the windows and lay a very light coating of topsoil or mulch over top of it so that when somebody steps back there to get into your window, it's going to let you know. Very low tech, very effective, especially if you have a dog that's good at that stuff in their home. But it just gives a little bit of a warning. So something real easy, real low tech, real low price, bubble wrap with a little bit of mulch over top of it. Super simple. What may take a little bit more for fortifying structures is think about what I'm going to call aggressive gardening. Like, okay, you've got those windows. How about putting a pretty nasty rose bush underneath the window? Because that's going to make it harder for somebody to want to get in and out of. Not impossible, but much less pleasant. And a lot of times, burglars are going to look for an easy target. And if you've got, thorn bushes underneath every window they can climb in, they're going to be less likely to go into yours unless they targeted yours for a reason. If they're just looking for an easy house and they go around the back of your house, less likely to want to climb in. There's something to think about. So rose bushes, Osage orange, cactus, if you live in that kind of climate, cacti, right? Things like that, stinging nettle, things like that you can plant that will make it very unpleasant for somebody trying to get into your windows. So that is something to be aware of. Let's see here. Okay, let's talk about another thing. Cover versus concealment. Cover stops bullets. Now, this is kind of a gray scale, right? Because what do we mean by that? Like, are you talking about stopping a 50 BMG? That's going to take a lot. You're talking about stopping a handgun bullet? It's going to take a lot less. So just let's say common rounds, 7.62, 39, 5.56, all your handgun rounds. What's cover that's going to stop that? If you're looking at purchasing a home or a property or renting a property, I think this should be, at least for me in my world, this is something that I consider. I do and have done jobs in the past where people may not like me. They may want to hurt me or my family. So I look at this, like when I'm going to rent a place, when I'm going to buy a place, I look at this. Most little boxes made of ticky-tacky, little boxes all the same, whether it's a red one or a pink one or a green one, they're little boxes of ticky-tacky and they're all kind of the same, if you know what I'm quoting there. But if they're made of just like drywall and your regular sheetrock and stuff like that, that's not going to stop much. So if you're looking for something, look for like thick wood, like log cabins, or even better stone or masonry. That's way, way better for protection, for stopping bullets, for things like that. So if you're looking for homes or places to rent, a brick house is way better than like the modern, drywall, aluminum siding house. That's not going to stop very much. So there's that. You can also look at having things. Now, you're probably, if you live in the suburbs, if you live in an HOA, you probably just run. Like, do you just want more government? Like, there's not enough government. You just want, give me more government. Give me an HOA. But anyway, even if you don't have an HOA, if you live somewhere with other people around, which is probably strike number 3 and in your strikes of where you should live. But anyway, most people do live where there are other people around. If you do, you probably don't want a bunch of sandbags in front of your front yard and like fighting positions, right? So you probably don't want the sandbags, but you might want sandbags for many reasons to just have, just in case if things are getting bad. Again, your house is going to be a harder target. Sandbags are what the military uses and has used for a long time to fortify things. So sandbags, they stop bullets. There's that. Here's an example of what I do. When I got my house, it was an older cabin. Somebody had taken the wood heat out and put in more modern pellet stove. Well, I put the wood heat back in. I got a bunch of wood, and I stack it around the house, around the front of the house. The back of the house is a cave and a mountain, so most people aren't coming around the back of the house. It's like a 10-hour hike to the nearest drivable road. But the front of the house, I stacked the wood pretty high, and it's a wood home, plus it's got extra cordwood stacked in front of it that's really thick. So, and it doesn't look bad. And it goes pretty much most of the length of the front of the house. That's a pretty good example of hardening a structure. Cover, making cover. And you could do that a bunch of ways. Those are some examples of ways that you can do that. You could do things like set up a couple of picnic tables in front of your house, and then if things do start getting bad, you just tip them up. It's not the best cover, but it's better than nothing. You get the idea. Making cover, thinking about cover. Maybe placing some large decorative rocks or boulders in the front of your house, depending on where you live in the landscaping. But that's, a big rock is even 50 cal cover, right? So there's an example of making cover. Retaining walls, things like that can be really good cover. So making cover and identifying what cover is in your house, because you probably have fallback positions in your house. But what is cover in your house and what is not? This is important for you to know. So identify what cover is and what cover is not. Just because you went into a different room does not mean you cannot be shot from the outside, right? If that bullet can go through walls, you can still be shot. So unless you have cover. So what is cover inside your house, and can you make cover in or outside of your house? So cover is important. So we talked about strategic placement of hard cover. Think about that strategic placement of hard cover. If you need to egress out of if you have to bug out real quick in a hurry and you're taking fire, how can you get out of your house? And can you place strategic cover so that can help you not get shot when you're trying to leave? That's an important one. So placement of hard cover. Parking. I could probably do a whole separate one on vehicles, but think about how you park your vehicles. Number one thing I want to talk about, you should park your vehicles in such a way that you can get them out quickly, which usually means backing into where you are. So don't just be lazy when you come home and pull into the driveway. Back into the driveway so you can leave quickly if you have to. Also, can you park in such a way as to give more cover to your domicile, to your house? Can you park and like maybe put your vehicles if you have two vehicles, put them at a 90-degree angle in front of your main door? That way you have created cover for yourself and an easy egress route and an easy egress vehicle. Like think about, don't just park your vehicle however, just because it's convenient. If you care about, physical security, park your vehicles in such a way that they're easy to get in and out of, maybe a way you can get into them while maintaining cover, a way you can get out quickly, and how can you park them to maximize cover. These are things that probably the average person does not think about, but I think about. So you think about that. That is creating cover. It's creating egress, a way for you to get out quickly, and just something to think about in general. So placement of vehicles, because most people have vehicles, and the A-pillar, B-pillar on your vehicle and the engine block, they're pretty good cover. So those are things to think about. Surveillance. Obviously, you there with your eyes, that's surveillance. If you live somewhere in a wide open area, having binoculars or something like that nearby, near a door or a window that you can just grab and look for observation. You also may want to think about night vision. If you have a bunch of other stuff checked out on your list, not just because you want to buy one because they're cool, but if you have several months worth of food stored and you have a good arsenal built up and you have medical supplies and all that other stuff, and you want night vision is something for this that you might want to consider. Thermals are much more expensive. If you don't have either, I would say start with night vision. It's also good for navigation where thermal's not so good. But night vision or, more simply, just binoculars. Something that, now if you live in the city and your front door and your windows, you can only see 50 yards, this doesn't really matter. But if you live somewhere where you can see a lot farther, several hundred yards, then you might think about your observation. Also, modern day surveillance being video cameras. These have gotten very affordable, very cheap, very easy to install. Like, there are advantages to closed circuit TV systems, CCTV, where everything's on your own network and everything, but that can be pretty expensive. Probably much more affordable today is just having either Wi-Fi cameras or cell phone, planned cameras where you can observe, even when you're not home, what's going on inside your perimeter. So surveillance, those cameras, again, they're crazy affordable and good compared to what they were even a decade ago. So that kind of surveillance, that's important. It gives you intel. It's not going to stop anybody, but it at least will give you intel. And it could also be evidence if something actually does get taken or somebody actually does get hurt. So, the video cameras. Will they work when the balloon hits the fan? Probably not. But until then, they're pretty handy to have. The surveillance. On that surveillance, you may also want to think about overwatch. Okay, overwatch being, can you get an elevated position, however, whomever that is, elevated position to have a greater vantage point. If you have a second-story house, having a place where you can observe on the second floor or on the roof or whatever the case is, right? Maybe a place behind the house or whatever where you can observe better. So observation posts. Also, building a network is important for security. That's probably beyond the scope of today's episode. But having a neighbor or two that you trust, that's something you should have, right? And letting them know, hey, I'm not going to be here this week or that week. Can you keep an eye on my place? Or I established this early on by God's grace with my neighbors, and they let me know, hey, some lady came to your house, not somebody I'd seen before. It turned out it was nothing. It was just a lady that knew somebody that used to live there a long time ago before we bought the house. I'd been vacant for years, but she just happened to be around, I guess, and was looking for the last occupant of the cabin who no longer lived there. But we weren't home, and my neighbor let me know this is what they were driving, this is what they look like. Like, that's nice to have because we had just moved in. We didn't have surveillance cameras and stuff yet. So establishing a network, going into surveillance, right? Nobody wants an overly nosy neighbor, but it's nice to have maybe that, retired lady or something on the block that kind of knows what's going on and can give you a heads up. And when something gets stolen, she's like, oh, yeah, there was this, supposed delivery driver or this supposed, salesman that same day, and this is what they look like, and this is what they were wearing, and this was their vehicle, right? So establishing a network for intelligence and surveillance, That doesn't have to be any kind of top secret James Bond stuff. It could just be the nosy lady on the block that you establish a good relationship with. Maybe you bring a cup of sugar every now and then, or, ask her if she needs anything, or, your wife sends her a card on her birthday, just to establish that rapport. Just surveillance network, right? It doesn't have to be crazy spy stuff. So, surveillance. Now let's talk about what you guys are probably excited about, guns. People are always like, what's the best home defense gun? The one you train with, the one you're good with. My personal preference is a shotgun. I've talked ad nausea about shotguns. I'm not going to get too far into that, but I don't care if you have a shotgun or you want your cool, sweet 11 5-inch carbine with a drum magazine in it and 4 different optics. Cool. Train with it. I don't care. Handguns are not as good as long guns, period. I love handguns. I compete with them and train with them more than anything else, but they are a stopgap measure, and they are not as good as long guns for stopping intruders or just ineffectiveness or ability to hit a target. So a long gun of some kind, preferably. If you have a handgun, it's what you have. But have a gun. More importantly than having a gun, have it accessible. I don't care how many guns you have in your safe, because if somebody breaks in, you're probably not getting into your safe. It's possible, not probable. Don't have guns in your safe unless it's a gun you're not using for defense. If it's a home defense gun, it should be out and accessible. If you have little kids, have it somewhere high enough they can't reach it. You're a parent, you know better than I do about that. But and then when your kids get old enough, train them to be around guns safely. Train them how to use guns, because they might be the one home when somebody breaks in and you're not home, or whatever it is. But have the gun accessible. That's more important than what kind of gun it is. Being able to get to it quickly is more important than whether it's a 9mm or a 45. That's way less relevant than can you get to it quickly. Is a 20 gauge enough, or should I have a 12 gauge? That's way less important than can you grab it quick, fast, and in a hurry, because home invasions generally happen pretty quickly. So have a gun, have it ready. That's the most important thing. Then you might want to think about something like a range card, depending on your property and your location. But a range card, this is something we make in the military if we have like a listening post, observation post, or a base, or fields of fire. This will have ranges on it so that the tree at the end of the driveway, that's 75 yards away. Or if it's a long way, the fence line is 200 yards away from the house. That dope, that setting, all that stuff. So having a range card, you can look up simply. I'm not going to get into that. I could probably do a whole episode on range cards, but look up what a range card is, what information should be on it, and maybe have that. If you have your observation post in your house, you don't have to call it that, right? You can call it something like the bird watching window for your family so they don't freak out. But you might have a range card or something around there, so you have it. But range cards, sectors of fire, if you have more than one person on your, I would call it a security detail, you might just call it your family. Like if the peanut butter and chocolate's hitting the fan, then I take this part of the house, my wife takes this part of the house, and our oldest son takes this part of the house. And we have our sectors of fire, getting back to range cards, overlapping fields of fire. Again, that's probably its own episode, but look up what range cards are, be familiar with them, know how to use them, and you might consider having those as part of your plan. Emergency Evacuation Plan, EAP. You need to have a way to get out of your AO, get out of your house, get out of your area of operation, get out of your work. All this applies to work as well, as much as it can. But how do you get out? Do you have an orderly way to get out? Do you have, a secondary route, a tertiary route? Do you have ways to get out? If you only have one way to get in and out of your apartment, that's a big problem. So how do you get in and out? Have egress routes, have rally points. This is a thing in the military. You don't have to call it a rally point. You can call it a meetup point. It could be the nosy lady's house from down the road that we talked about. It could be the next street over or the next block over where your favorite, froyo shack is, or whatever people do in the city. It could be the bus stop where your kid goes to school. Like if something happens and you got to run out of the house, we all meet together at the bus stop because little Johnny knows where the bus stop is. You get the idea. Doesn't have to be super tactical names, but in the tactical world, we would call that a rally point or an objective rally point or an alternate rally point. You probably want multiple, but a rally point. And then you should drill this with your family. Just like, this is not some crazy thing, right? How many times in school do kids drill fire drills? Well, look up the stats for home invasions and residential fires. Home invasions are more likely, last time I checked, or violent crime. I take that back. I think violent crime is more likely than residential fires. But yeah, look up the stats for yourself. It's alarming. So if you don't think it's crazy to do a fire drill, you probably don't think it's crazy. You probably shouldn't think that it's crazy to do a home invasion drill. You have to drill this stuff. Everybody has their things. They grab their weapons if something becomes untenable, right? Like, I'm never leaving. I'm Alamo in this thing. Okay, well, when somebody hides behind, your neighbor's cover so you can't shoot them, and they throw a Molotov cocktail on your asphalt shingle roof and your house is burning down, you can stay there and Alamo it if you want, but you're probably just going to die with your family. I know that's sad to say, but you need to have a bug out plan. So you should practice and drill that. Like, how do you get out of there? And you should drill that and practice that. You should practice defending your house. You should practice exiting your house in different routes, different scenarios, but drill it, practice it. That's something you should probably do if you're talking about fortifications. So those are some really quick down and dirty thoughts on fortifying structure. Again, there's probably double that I didn't talk about, and this is a quick overview. This is something that you should do at your house. And one of the advice that I would give guys getting ready for an operation, if I was planning it or somebody else was planning it, or I had, one of my team leaders, I was outsourcing that. I was delegating that. Hey, you're going to write this op order for this arena. You're going to write this op order. One of the good pieces of advice is pretend you're the bad guy. Look at it like you're the bad guy. So next time you're driving home, stop for a minute on the outskirts of your street or whatever, whenever you can see your house, and think, if I were going to break into this house, how would I do that? If I wanted to do it just to get stuff in the middle of the night or when people were out of town, how would I break in? Or if I wanted to wait till people were home because I wanted to do really bad things to people, how would I go about that? How would I get that done? I know you probably don't want to think like that, but the bad guy's thinking like that. So if you want to plan defensively, you need to think like that. If you were a bad guy, what's the enemy's most dangerous course of action? And what's the enemy's most likely course of action? MCOLA, right? So what is the enemy likely to do? And what's like the worst case scenario thing that they could do? You should probably think like that when you're looking at your property or your business, whatever it is you're defending. So when it comes to having a plan, thinking like the enemy, thinking like the adversary, thinking like the bad guy, what would you do if you were trying to break into a place or hurt somebody in that place? What would you do? And so make it harder for them to do that thing. And it's really kind of that simple. Think about it like that. If you think about it like if you're a decent chess player, a lot of times you're thinking about, what am I going to do? But if you're a decent chess player, you're probably also thinking, what is my adversary most likely to do? What's the worst thing they could do? Okay, they take my queen, so I probably shouldn't make that move. So think about things like that when you're looking at your property, your house, your domicile, your place of business. Think like the bad guy. That's a good rule of thumb. So those are some thoughts. And it seems like wrapped up in this, there were a lot of tactical tips. So with that, I'm going to go to the tactical verse of the day. Got a good one here for you. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor, and has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. Okay, my comments. Going back to where we started. Doesn't really matter if you live in your house to be 120 years old and it never gets attacked if you die and go to hell. You missed the point, right? So what's most important is God and his laws and his rules and having a relationship with him. So keep that number one in anything you do in this topic or any other. God should be at the center. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.